Hey guys, in this video, I'm going to teach you what you need to know, what you need to be looking for to find your technical co-founder, your chief technical officer for your startup venture. Okay, so we're going to talk about 3 stories, things that I saw other CTOs doing, mistakes that they made that we're going to learn from. We're going to draw some lessons from those 3 stories. And then at the end, I'm going to give you one super concrete example of what you should be expecting from a CTO. We're going to take a look at what Gemini did for one of our projects to quickly build and iterate fast and to prove out an idea as a CTO. All right, so a few weeks ago, there was a local networking group, and they asked me to give a talk on how to find a co-founder. And so I figured as long as I was putting that talk together, I would go ahead and just do a recording of it real quick. It's going to be kind of raw and fast, but I figured it might be useful to folks online. So here it is. First things first, when they first asked me to do this, I thought, what could I possibly add to this conversation? If you go on YouTube right now, you can look up Y Combinator, how to find a co-founder. You're going to find this great talk by Harj. He goes through a ton of really good things to look at when you're finding your co-founder. So what I think I can maybe provide in addition to that is specifically, how do you find your technical co-founder? You have a great idea, you need somebody to help you build it. How do you find that builder? We're going to go through 3 stories of other CTOs that I've worked with. I've heard their stories. I've seen them doing things. We're going to talk about some of the mistakes they've made and how that can inform us and what we're looking for with a CTO. But then I'm also going to end with a super concrete example of a project that we worked on at Gemini and sort of how we approached that, how we built it out, acting as a CTO. Real quick, a little bit about me. So I started engineering in 2011 at an enterprise at Boeing, went to a consultancy after that, ended up working for a startup out of Silicon Valley for a couple years. Once I got laid off, I had the opportunity to start Gemini in 2022, where we are helping founders go from idea to MVP with fractional CTO services. And we kind of have carved out this specialty in like data-driven apps. So like machine learning as a service, IoT as a service. There's a lot of that people are building, and we have some experience in that. Also in 2023, just last year, that's wrong. 2024 is what that should say. Anyways, 2024, we started the How Not to Build podcast, where I'm going through and interviewing CTOs and founders, sharing their insights and inspiration. And so I've actually used a lot of that content to be able to inform this talk that you guys are about to hear. And of course, there's a picture of me and the family there. Don't let the cuteness of the little one fool you. He's a complete menace. And like every good startup child, you're going to say, Mommy, where do co-founders come from? I'm not sure why you have a little bit of an accent there. One thing I can tell you is that when Joey and I started, well, actually, the one thing that you're going to hear in that talk that Harj gives you, one of the biggest things, and he says, your co-founder should be somebody you've already worked with. That is the most ideal situation. Joey and I worked together at Avail for 6 months to a year, something like that. And Avail was going through some trying times, okay? The ship was on fire, it was going down. We were trying to figure out what to do in the teams, what to do in the business. And that's a really good way to see somebody's true colors. I saw how Joey operated under stress. He saw how I operated under stress. We had a unique chance to see each other's strengths and weaknesses. But that's what told us that, yeah, I really want to do business with this person. So you should be looking for the Joey in your life. The advice that I'm going to give you is to maybe help you assess that person a little bit more. Or if you don't have a Joey, just if you're meeting somebody at a local networking event, you're starting that conversation, these will be helpful things to keep in your mind as you go through that process. All right. So like I said, I'm going to give you guys 3 stories. We're going to learn from others. And even if I start to use the word failure, one thing I want to make clear is that in none of these 3 stories do I consider any of these folks failures. Thomas Edison, right? One of his famous quotes is that I have not failed. I have found 10,000 ways that do not work. That's the approach that I want to take here. So even if that word slips out of my mouth, we're just learning from others. We're learning the ways that don't work. And it doesn't mean that they were failures. It doesn't mean that you're going to be a failure. A lot of this stuff we just learn through trying, find out what doesn't work, and then try something else. Okay, so the first story is an unfortunate saga. Tony's obsession with the wrong problem. So I mentioned I worked at Avail. Avail was a car sharing platform. It's like Airbnb for cars. Owners would list their cars on the platform. They would drop them off at the lots, the operational lots that Avail was running, and then Avail would rent them out to borrowers. So one of the key ways that the company made money was keeping those vehicles available to be borrowed, right? And that meant that the lot operation people had quite a long process of inspecting cars as they came in and out, servicing them, doing vehicle repairs, handling claims, insurance claims, all that kind of stuff. It was a pretty massive operation. And so at one point, we had a problem with our profitability where cars were not available often enough. They were not making money. And as we looked at it from a technical perspective, the de facto CTO at the time found a bug in our database where vehicles would kind of get stuck in an unlisted state. They were not available to be rented out, even though they had already gone through all the cleaning processes. They were technically ready to go on site. It's just the data wasn't updated in the database. Well, this CTO kind of got fixated on that problem and decided that we were going to go implement a big design pattern to basically fix this bug. The design pattern was called a Saga, hence the name of the story here. Anyways, that took about 3 months, maybe more. I don't know, 3 to 6 months or something to implement that pattern. And to be honest with you, it wasn't even fully rolled out in the whole code base, I think, if I remember correctly. But the other thing was that bug was really only impacting maybe 5 or 10% or something small like that, was only impacting this availability issue. And talking to the product people at the company, the real issue with these cars not being available was that they had to, man, it's a good thing I'm not doing this live. Hold on. Back to my notes. Notes. Yep. Okay, right. All right. So the real problem was actually that the operational staff that was required to handle the cars, to clean them, to service them, that was just killing our profitability. So we really should have been looking at how can we make the operational staff more efficient? How can we automate some of those processes? How can we do better background checking so that cars are not coming back, as damaged or as dirty as they were, that kind of thing. And here's the real kicker too, by the way. That bug that we were trying to implement this big design pattern for, which took 3 to 6 months, we ended up writing a script in about, a day or two to just go into the database, look for this messed up data and fix it. And yeah, we had to run that job maybe once every couple of days, but that would have allowed us to take all those resources, all those 3 to 6 months we spent on this design pattern, and really refocus on building systems, building other systems to make the operational lots more efficient. By the way, that startup eventually failed. We weren't able to get that profitability that we needed in order to keep going. So what are a couple of lessons that we can learn from this? I think number one, even your CTO should be very user focused. Can your CTO articulate the user's problems? Can they articulate the operational problems? Because in this case with the lot staff, they were just as much users because they were impacting our profitability as the borrowers and the owners were. So we really should have been more focused on helping them out. Secondly, the engineering to product alignment. Can your CTO tell you how the technical roadmap relates to the customer problems? In hindsight, we know that bug was only impacting 5%, but even now I don't know the true number. I know it was very, very low, and I know that investing 3 to 6 months into impacting something that's happening 5% of the time when you could just patch it with a script, that's not the right trade-off, right? So your CTO should be able to tell you, hey, here's this great new technology, this great new design pattern. Here's how it's going to directly help our profitability by helping one of our user groups. I think the third thing that you should be thinking about is these scaling trade-offs. So does your CTO start with quick, simple solutions with a plan of when to scale? Like I said, if you're in startup mode, you are beelining it to profitability. You have no business building big patterns that are going to take 3 to 6 months to do, that are going to help you a year from now when you've scaled to a super large volume. If you can do a 4-hour patch or a 2-day patch in the meantime while you pursue profitability, that's probably what you should be doing. You should at least have that conversation. Let me put it that way. All right. So the next story I want to share with you guys is the one trick pony, Shanie's inability to contribute in more ways than just code. So in the past couple years since I've been at Gemini, we worked with these 2 founders to build their product. After several months of development, they had a lot of great features, but they really didn't have any users. And as the investor money started to dry up and they were coming down to the wire, their biggest need was to find new users, but the CTO of that particular company, Shanie, she just kind of doubled down on the things that she knew how to do. She knew how to code, and so she went in and she kept coding. She would code, she would push code, she would break things, she would refactor, she would code some more. And all the while, it's like at the end of 3 to 6 months, they might have had 5 new features, but they only had 5 new users, and they really needed tens and hundreds of users in order to get to prove out the first version of this thing so that they could unlock the investor money and start working on the next version. But what can we learn from this as you look at a chief technical officer? Well, first of all, does this person have diverse experiences? What other jobs or experiences have they had to provide a unique perspective? When Joey and I got together, I had worked in enterprise, he had worked in the government space, which were similar but different enough to where we complemented each other. I hate paperwork. He was really good at sifting through the paperwork to figure out what we needed to do. Excuse me. It's cold, man. Anyway, so Joey and I had a couple different diverse backgrounds that could come together. Second thing is networks. What other worlds are they involved in that can bring that unique perspective? Even though Shanie was super great at coding, I mean, just super deep, super well knowledgeable, and amazing at pushing features, even if Shanie couldn't market, with her 30 years of experience, she probably knew a lot of good marketing people. She should have spent her time engaging those people, working with them to go do the marketing to get users on the platform and not just build more and more features. Powering through. Let's go. Goodness gracious me. Anyway, okay, so that's networks. The last thing is comb-shaped. Now, when I was at Boeing for the beginning of my career, one of my managers told me you want to be T-shaped. You want to be broad in one area and broad in a lot of areas and deep in one area. Actually, I think for entrepreneurs, for founders and co-founders and CTOs and CEOs, you actually want to be comb-shaped. You want to be broad in a lot of areas, but you actually want to be deep in multiple areas. You want to have deep knowledge of maybe not just code in one industry, but maybe different patterns in multiple industries for a technical person. Or you want to be versed in doing prototypes, but also MVPs, right? Early stage and maybe also late stage. And even if you don't have that experience today, you really should have the willingness to learn and to adapt and to recognize that the skills you have right now that you're bringing to the table are probably not enough because you may not have done this before. So be willing to go deep into multiple areas as you grow. Do they have the domain expertise in more than just one area? I should have put in there, or at least the willingness to learn. All right, so one final story for you here, the 2-week test. If you don't know MacGyver, look him up. Hopefully he's a good avatar for this. So we're talking about Lincoln for a second and how his trust ended up costing him dearly. So Lincoln had a great product idea. He wanted to build a SaaS platform that would transform his insurance industry, and he was recommended through his network to an app developer who was acting as a CTO. And this CTO said, look, I can be done with this in 2 weeks. Hey, that's a great promise, right? And they should be great like that. They should be like MacGyver, where they can do amazing things with just duct tape and super glue and paper clips, right? Well, this one wasn't really able to deliver on that 2-week promise. 2 weeks turned into 2 months. And to make matters worse, Lincoln's never done this before. So Lincoln basically said, hey, this has to be basically perfect. I need an MVP before I ever bring users on, which again is a common mistake of the CEO types of founders. And so that 2 months turned into 9 months, turned into a lot of wasted time and money. And in the end, they still didn't really have anything that they felt comfortable bringing users on board to test out and validate their idea and get some traction. And all this time, by the way, the app developer CTO kept saying, hey, it's just 2 more weeks. It's just 2 more weeks. So what do we learn from this? If you're looking for a CTO, number one, you have to be able to start small. What's the 2-week chunk of work they can deliver you so you can see how they work? You can see their product. In the beginning, man, it's all about just validating the idea and getting some initial traction, being able to test and prove your hypotheses. And you're going to have to do that usually at some point with code, with some kind of working prototype. And there's a lot you can do in 2 weeks. In the example that I'm about to give, you'll see some of that in action. Number 2, kind of in line with that, you have to expect value. You should not be waiting 2 months, 9 months to get some kind of value back from that CTO. You have to be getting usable software and value at each step of the way. And look, this doesn't have to be money-making software. This doesn't mean that you're going to get an MVP in 2 weeks where you're going to onboard 100 users and start getting, $20 per user. That's not really what I mean. What I mean is, if you're looking to integrate with some platform, if you're looking to integrate with Twilio or integrate with Stripe or something like that, that should be done in a matter of days and be off your list. And it shouldn't be something where you're still wondering if that's going to work 2 months from now, 6 months from now. Third and final thing is avoid yes men. If your CTO, is your CTO willing to push back on jobs that are too hard or too big? If your CTO is always like 2 more weeks, no problem, I got this, and you're not seeing the value, not a good sign. Not a good sign. A good CTO is going to say, hey, you might not need to do that. There's an easier way to do it. Or, hey, I don't see how that feature lines up with the product that we're trying to build. They're going to push back because they don't want to waste their time either. And hopefully they believe in your product enough to where they're worried that, hey, that feature might be more than we need, and that might actually not be good for the app. So they're kind of thinking strategically, just like you are, about where this app is going to go. How do we roll this out? How do we get users on it sooner than later? All right. So what I want to do now is give you guys a super practical example of what a CTO should be able to do for you. We came up with this app idea called Andi. So Gemini was sort of functioning as a CTO for that app. And the app itself is conceptually, it's pretty simple. It's a social media lead generation app. It's actually referrals, not leads, but that's more complicated to get into. So we'll just think of it as a lead generation app as we go through this. Our first thing was, how do we build a feasibility proof of concept? That's the POC there. And can we demo it to some early users to get feedback? So it took us about 3 hours one night. On our local running computer, we scraped some data from Nextdoor, fed that into ChatGPT to qualify some leads, and then send some push notifications to a little Telegram bot. All very straightforward. We then demoed this, 30-minute, actually it was less than that. It was maybe a 15-minute demo to 10-person focus group, potential customers of the app. They all loved it. They all said, this is amazing if you can do this. One of them even said, take my money. So that was really good validation just with the idea itself. And I think it's really compelling when your users can actually see something built, even though it's, we're not using the Nextdoor API properly. We're scraping data, right? It's very simple, but it starts to get that market feedback. So from there, the next thing we did was to basically put together some user interviews, follow up with those 10 folks, understand them better, what their pain points are, all that kind of stuff. So just general support from a CTO perspective, doing a little bit of market research. But then we get into some of the data scraping, data validation, which was a lot more market research. And part of this was we had a hypothesis about where we could find these social media leads. So we wrote some code that would go through. You can see here we collected, 10,000 posts from different Facebook groups, ran them through some qualification stuff, and basically doing some data validation to make sure that there would actually be good social media leads that would match our customers. And we did that with, Playwright technology, which is just a web scraping technology, deployed that on AWS Lambda, again, using ChatGPT. Pretty straightforward. Took us roughly 2 weeks. After that came some wireframes. So the data was looking good. So now that we know that there's potential here, let's go ahead and build out the UI. Took us about a day. And really one of the things that we're looking for here is, based on this vision of what Andi should look like, this app that we're building, are there any other risk areas? Is there anything else that they're trying to do that is going to say, hey, we might not know how to do that, or hey, that might violate Facebook's terms of service, right? There's things like that that you need to know up front that you should be exploring before you get too far in the process. From those mockups, another thing as far as market validation is we want to get some pre-sales going. We wanted to get a landing page going to start collecting emails on a wait list, right? Pretty standard stuff. So for that, we took the wireframes from Miro. We went over to Bolt. We spent 3 to 4 hours prompting Bolt to, if you guys don't know, it's bolt.new. It's one of these no-code platforms that builds your app for you just through AI prompting. So we did all that, and with about 4 hours of prompting and then another 4 hours of cleanup and deployment stuff, within one day we had a fully functional demo app deployed on the web. This allowed us to, number one, do a great demo video for the pre-sales and the marketing activities. Number two, it also gave us a public link that we could share out with potential users so that when people are going to that landing page, they can click through, find the app, play with it. We can actually start to measure how people are using the app, right? It just makes for a better all-around demo. So again, another day or two to build out the landing page, put all the resources on there, the YouTube video, connect it to the waitlist, all that good stuff. Now there is one more final build because we kind of done some feasibility proof of concepts up to this point. Now we're ready for what I would consider a prototype, something that's real enough that we could actually get users on, give them a little bit of value, and continue to validate how things are working, how the market likes what we're building. So that's a little more complicated. It took us about another 2 weeks deploying a React front end, a very tiny, small Node.js backend in Lambda, again, pulling data from Facebook, running it through ChatGPT for qualification, and then connecting that to Twilio so that when it finds a good lead or a good referral, it can just send a text message to the business owner that it applies to. This is about 25 days total that it took us to go through this whole process. And a lot of it, as you saw, was not even technical, right? A lot of that was like setting up the marketing, the landing page, and the CTO is just supporting some of those things. But the main thing a CTO is doing is these feasibility POCs, providing data, collecting data. They can help with some of the market research, especially when data is involved, that sort of thing. The actual app idea, here's another thing to keep in mind, you guys. The actual app idea is very complex. It's this whole thing, because founders dream big, right? It's this whole thing about AI, running on your phone, running here, running there, running everywhere. It's collecting all these things. We want to get into not just explicit social media requests, right, or leads, but implicit leads. What if somebody just says in a text message, oh, my back hurts. Hey, I can recommend a chiropractor, whatever. But the important thing is the CTO is not saying, let's go build all of that right now. The CTO is saying, hey, what's the smallest thing we can build to provide some value right now, to help get traction, to help build our app long term, right? Because maybe you need to just get users on the wait list to go get funding, or maybe you want to bootstrap it. So you're looking for that smallest thing. The CTO is going to help you find that. And they're going to start to let you know as they knock on the technical doors, as it were, hey, this door is going to be a lot easier to go through than that door over there. What do you guys think? You agree? Disagree? Let me know down below. Thanks so much for watching. If you're still here, what was I going to say? Let me know if you agree or disagree. I really just hope that this helps you guys think through what to look for in a chief technical officer. There's a lot of good content that's kind of generalized out there about looking for a co-founder. I really hope this helps with the CTO part of that. Let me know if you have more questions. Here's all my details, obviously. Reach out. And if you guys have great ideas and you're looking for a CTO to help you out, you haven't found somebody, ideally you have a Joey in your life. If you don't, Gemini is always here to help. Would love to hear from y'all. All right, take care.